For Tamika Lawrence, nothing is the same anymore. The heart of New York, her city, it still beats, but much more slowly than it did before. She's been performing on Broadway stages for 10 years. But everything's been closed down here since the outbreak of the pandemic.
In front of this theater now, I feel sort of a heartbreak that I didn't feel before.
What's next for Tamika? What's next for New York? Can the city recover from the pandemic? Manhattan, Times Square. If there's one place in the world where life never stands still, it's right here. But now this magical place is deserted. Almost. Tamika runs into some colleagues by chance. They're also musicians and currently out of work. But they're busy, shooting a music video for the internet as superheroes. Superpowers can't hurt right now.
Oh, sure. Doing their thing while exactly what we're doing? Yeah. Sure.
New York, the city where dreams are meant to become reality. Right now, it's more like a nightmare for many. The borders have been closed for months. There are no tourists, no shows, and no money. America is faltering, and for New Yorkers like Tamika, every day has become a struggle to carry on and be able to remain in the city. She made enormous sacrifices to make it to Broadway.
When I closed my eyes and when I would dream, I just saw myself on stage, so that's when I really started to see that. Coming here took a lot of discipline. So when everybody's like partying in college, I was working 2 jobs. I was studying in a conservatory. I was taking my liberal arts classes too, and then doing an internship at the theater company, acting in those shows. And so every hour of my life was dedicated to learning the craft of acting and learning how to be a good musician.
It takes some people years to get a Broadway gig, but Tamika managed it in just a month. It's her version of the American dream. But the dream is over, at least for now. All theaters are closed because of the coronavirus pandemic, and it was recently announced that they will remain closed at least until next June. The show in which Tamika was meant to appear right now is about a black woman living in America during the 1960s at the height of the civil rights movement. An important topic now just before the presidential election, because the US is more divided today than it's been in a very long time, into opponents and supporters of President Donald Trump, and also in the question of whether black Americans are still systematically disadvantaged.
I feel sad, and partially for me, yes, but also I feel more sad for people who would benefit from seeing it. I feel sad for that family from Iowa who, may not understand why people say Black Lives Matter, who might want to see this because it's just a musical and they don't know what it's about, and then maybe they can receive something is like imprinted on their heart to understand why people say the things that they say.
The coronavirus pandemic is pulling American society even further apart. In New York City alone, roughly 24,000 people have already died from the virus. Thanks to strict regulations such as extensive masking, the city has been able to keep the virus better in check recently. But the number of infections is slowly rising again. And in other parts of the country, the situation is much more menacing. Black Americans like Tamika are especially concerned. Statistically, their risk of infection is 3 times higher than that of their fellow white citizens. The pandemic is bringing the deep-seated inequality within American society back to the surface, something that also worries Tamika a great deal. Her home is in the Bronx, the poorest borough in New York City. Here, Tamika is kept busy with her new side job. Since the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic, she's been designing fashion and jewelry with socio-critical and political messages.
In loving memory of
A little extra income in these hard times. She puts her finger in the open wounds of American society with many of her designs. Tamika wants to do her part to make sure that things get back on track in America. This is one reason why all her products are made in the USA.
It's important to have stuff made in the US here because it means keeping Americans employed, because employment leads to health coverage, leads to less stress, hopefully. I think that at a time like this, it's super imperative to think about that.
Do we want forks or spoons? What are we doing?
Well, I use chopsticks, but
Excuse me.
well.
Where?
But there's, yeah, whatever you want to use.
Okay. I will wash these up. Voila.
Thank you. I think there's, can you wash some of these off, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
Josh also hopes for a better future. He and Tamika have been friends since they appeared on a Broadway stage together. Josh too lost his job because of the coronavirus. But unlike Tamika, he decided to leave New York, like so many others.
Since the pandemic has hit, of course, it makes it impossible to sustain life here for a lot of people, right? So I have a subletter that's in my place. I'm in California, actually staying in my parents' mobile home. It didn't make sense to stay here if I didn't have work. What normally keeps me here is the work, you know what I mean? And if I'm gonna be sans paycheck in the city, I might as well have someone else pay my rent who needs to be here and spend the time with my family. That was the main aim.
Now Josh is visiting for a few weeks because he managed to get a couple of smaller gigs. But the city is not what he remembers.
Whatever you think.
It's a strange feeling because the city is very different. You know what I mean? It's quieter. You don't have that surge of folks that are coming in to see shows and visitors from all over the world. You just basically have New Yorkers for the most part. So there's a part of it that's refreshing. There's a part of that that's a little sad. But I know that we're strong city folk, and I'm sure that we're going to bounce back soon. I'm praying on it.
When she has time, Tamika also looks in on her neighbors. Today, she meets Jay in the lobby.
How's everything going?
Everything's good. Thank you for coming down.
Yeah, you called me. I was sitting there reading
Oh, what are you reading?
my one-year Bible.
Oh, okay. Does it have like the devotionals with it too? So it's like.
Well, I have a separate book for devotionals,
Okay.
but it gives you Old Testament, New Testament, the Proverbs, and the Psalms.
Okay.
The Old New Testaments.
Okay.
If you
Nice.
read it every day, you'll complete it in 1 day.
Yeah.
Jay has diabetes, and his left foot had to be amputated shortly before the pandemic. Like him, a disproportionately high number of Black Americans suffer from pre-existing conditions and are especially at risk during the pandemic.
I had just started physical rehab the month prior. When the pandemic came, I was knocked out of rehab because I was considered a high-risk candidate. So that's why I'm still in this chair, not walking. This is the daily thing, come out, get air, go back in, and that's it. But We just have to keep on going forward and trying to stay alive.
But many weren't so lucky.
Watch out for that lip.
The hospital is just around the corner from Tamika's apartment. She will never forget the weeks when the city was the worldwide epicenter of the pandemic.
I would Uber past here and see the, semi-trucks that were for all the deceased bodies at the height of that, and that was very alarming. It was a very scary time. The constant sirens going off, the streets were very empty. It made me feel like it was kind of the end of the world.
But it was not yet the end. As the number of new cases in New York increases, so does the fear of a second wave.
I'm afraid of what will happen because of that. I'm afraid that I won't be able to see my parents because of it, or visit them, or make sure that they're okay. I'm afraid that everything will close and the entire economy and all the businesses will collapse because of it. I guess I'm more afraid of the ramifications of how it will affect people than what it will do to me.
In the evening, Tamika Lawrence is drawn back to Times Square. For many people, it's the symbol of New York. For her, it's a place full of beautiful memories.
Being here at nighttime, it feels more joyous. It's nice to know that it's not completely empty. It reminds me of what was, and I really like that. The vibrancy of Times Square and the vibrancy of New York. I think that's something that I was nervous was going to be gone forever. But it's nice to see that there are still people who want to come to Times Square and just see the lights. I think it's beautiful.
And it gives Tamika hope that New York and New Yorkers will also overcome this crisis somehow.